Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Charlie Russell, and we'll wait one more minute before we get started, so if people are still joining. While people are joining, let me welcome everyone and thank you for joining our webinar today. So before we do go ahead and jump into the presentation, I'd like to point out some of the features of the webinar platform that we're using today. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So you'll see down below the slides, you'll see an Ask a Question box. And you can go ahead and type your question in there, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Also want to point out there is a Resources tab located near the top right of your screen where you can find several resources that are related to today's topic that you can download. So with that said, we wanted to give an extra minute for everyone to join. Welcome, everyone. My name is Charlie Russell. I'd like to introduce myself and our speakers today. Steve Brown is Senior Product Manager for Limelight Networks. He has over 20 years of combined experiences in IP networking, content delivery networks, streaming video, and edge compute, and is Senior Product Manager responsible for Limelight's Edge Functions serverless edge compute platform. We also have Olivier Noel as an architect in the expert services team at Limelight Networks, and started at Limelight as an advanced services architect, working with some of the top customers across the EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. So providing technical consultancy and expertise on Limelight's portfolio, and is now working in the expert services team. Today we'd like to cover content and service protection, an overview, a little bit about how that might work at the edges of a content delivery network, and some solutions that leverage that CDN edge computing, and finally get into the ease of implementation with edge functions. First of all, let's just establish some context. We're really talking about splitting the content protection and service protection into logical blocks, if you will. So content protection might involve things like encryption, and really is about the assets themselves. And service protection is about the interactivity across the networks and out to end users. So again, content protection and service protection, related concepts. So now let's talk about the content delivery network and how content delivery networks can participate in and help by really creating an advanced edge platform. So what you see now is we've created this concept of a logical back office where some of that content protection might take place and where business rules might be applied. But the reason for doing this is protection of your assets. So I want to make sure that we sort of cover the why. Piracy of high-value content can be devastating to its legitimate owners or rights holders or advertisers or distributors or whatever role you play. Whether it's streaming video or games or music or files, you can't afford to have that content exposed or the services that deliver that content. So you see here, we've got the protection that's being applied in the back office, the protected assets that are being uploaded to an origin for the content delivery network to deliver. And then we're introducing this idea of a control layer, which is really when you get a request for a streaming video, for example, there's more to it than just sending the video. You need to have this control layer where it says, is this person authorized to access? And then to do that enforcement at the edge, which avoids implementing in many different clients. So again, the advanced edge platform really lives at the edges of the content delivery network and helps you prevent piracy and secure your content, secure your services. So that's a brief introduction to the concepts that we're going to frame the discussion we'll have today. So next, I would like to pass the baton to Steve Brown to talk about some of these things in more detail. Steve, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charlie. So one key aspect of this, addressing this problem space is content protection itself. And modern streaming media content protection is almost always accomplished by using one of the prevalent digital rights management solutions that are available in the industry today, such as Google Widevine, Microsoft PlayReady, or Apple FairPlay. At a high level, these solutions protect content by encrypting it and providing a mechanism such that only devices belonging to authorized parties can securely decrypt it and play it back. Additionally, these solutions allow for basic business rules to be embedded in a license, such as a playback time window or limiting output ports on devices to perhaps block analog ports or insist that the only port to be used is the HDMI port in addition to the main playback screen, for example, or that the digital rights management client-side aspects are run in a trusted execution environment, as one might find on a streaming set-top box. Devices and software media players that support these DRM techniques must strictly comply with the technical requirements of the DRM vendor that we're talking about, the three that we talked about or other solutions out there. And the DRM protected media is typically delivered via a CDN to facilitate large-scale streaming. And content owners rely on the encryption protection of the DRM as the media traverses the CDN and resides in CDN cache servers. Content streaming services provide information such that the clients can obtain the decryption keys and the licenses according to the requirements of the DRM in use. So this is the common way that assets themselves are protected, such that if an unauthorized party had them and did not have the key, there's really no way that they credibly could decrypt them and, in an unwarranted way, access the content. Some service protection examples. Service protection, as Charlie said, is really about protecting access to the services that are offered to consumers around the content that's being distributed. There are a number of streaming services that offer live content, VOD content, what have you. So while DRM is important, it's not enough to completely protect the revenue streams of content owners. Content's being made available to consumers with complex terms of services that are applied to a variety of assets, like we mentioned, live and on-demand media. On-demand media itself has multiple models, transactional models, subscription models, and ad-supported models, along with secondary content and bundles of these. And it's happening in constantly changing ways. And furthermore, content is being distributed through multiple delivery networks. So this means that content owners need to enforce additional terms of services beyond which can be expressed in typical DRM technology, and they often need to protect access to the streaming services themselves. So we'll talk about at greater length some of the methods that are used: token-based access control, business rule enforcement for a variety of business rules that could be unique to a particular situation, geographic-based enforcement, forensic watermarking, and access revocation. So now I'll turn, actually not quite yet. I'm still on the stage, folks. We'll be getting to Olivier shortly. Let's take a look at the token-based access control. URL tokens can be used to protect content and services such that only authorized parties can access them from the CDN. Built-in solutions are offered by a number of CDN vendors, including Limelight with our Media Vault solution, where we provide a straightforward way for content owners to create tokens for validation by the Limelight CDN using mutually known hashing algorithms. With this approach, content owners can limit access on a number of conditions, including time windows and IP access address ranges, among others. Another approach that's emerging is to leverage the standards-based JSON Web Token solution. JWT is an open standard, and it defines a compact and self-contained method for securely transmitting information between parties encoded as a JSON object that can contain information of the content owner's choosing when it's being used for these kinds of purposes. The JWT has gained popularity due to its compact size and flexibility. Tokens can be easily transmitted via query strings, header attributes, or within the body of an HTTP post method. Using JWTs in conjunction with a CDN integrated serverless compute platform like Limelight's Edge functions, content providers are now empowered to authenticate and authorize access on their own terms according to their own needs. Business logic, or what I like to refer to as the area of custom business rules. By exploiting serverless compute capabilities of an advanced CDN like Limelight's Edge functions, providers can implement and deploy almost any business rules they want in order to affect their terms of service and monetize content in the way that they wish. Running at the edge as part of the delivery flow, serverless functions can communicate with the back office to enforce complex business rules right at the source of the user's content stream in a low latency fashion. So by expressing and enforcing business rules in the network, as Charlie mentioned earlier, it avoids the need to implement them across a dizzying array of smartphones, tablets, browsers, game consoles, streaming devices, and whatever else comes down the pipe. So the kinds of rules that you might see where this is effective and useful can be household account-wide level rules. So streaming services and other content services are often offered to entire households where the entire family can access them. But in order to protect monetization of the content, often streaming limits are needed to limit the number of overall streams that can be delivered to a household, whether that be overall live streams, overall VOD streams. The complexity can grow, but you have the power to enforce those rules by leveraging the techniques that we're talking about here. Other rules can be based on limiting the overall number of devices per account, stream count limits per asset, or limiting the quality level of assets. Perhaps you have a service that you monetize for extra money for HD content versus SD content. You can express and implement those rules using this technique. So I hope that helps understand how we might protect content and services using DRM and tokens and business logic. Olivier will now talk about a few other ways that you can protect your services.
Thank you, Steve. So as Steve exposed earlier, for every delivery or distributed content, there are business rules associated, and more precisely, contractual aspects on how you can distribute them. One of these rules is the geo restriction. You can distribute a content into a specific region or a specific country or specific countries. The technical answer to use is the geo IP resolution solution, like the one the Limelight CDN could provide. The IP of the request is translated into geographical informations, countries, region, cities. If the geo information is allowed, like the country is allowed, then the content is delivered, and else the content is rejected. Now, it is observed that more and more people accessing to content from non-allowed country can get the content. So to do that, people are using VPN, which allow them to tunnel their internet traffic. For example, I'm based in France, and I'm looking on content which are only allowed in the United States. And to do that, I'm connected to a VPN, which make me feeling as a US user. In this case, the basic geo IP detection database will not spot those kind of behavior. It will be seen as in my example, as a US end user. And you might need to use advanced TOIP database, which are more precise and more discrete to detect the VPN, and by providing more details around that. The previous service protection examples showed us ways to protect the access to the content and apply business rules to get the access. But which options are available when the pirate or the people who are stealing the content is able to get access, to pass through that barrier? So, well, it is possible to detect who is pirating the content by using watermarking solutions. There is initially one additional step which is happening during the content preparation to prepare the content for watermarking. And during the delivery at the edge, using Limelight Edge Function platform as an example, and based on the information, the session information, and the predefined algorithm for the watermarking, a function will create a unique identifier, a unique identifiable watermark pattern on per session based on the watermark asset. Then once the link content is identified, it is then possible to retrieve which specific watermark pattern was generated, and so which session was used, and by consequence, identifying who was accessing to that content. And as the content distributor, or as the customer who is delivering that content, you can take action. And one of the actions is to block the access. It is quite simple to block access for an account during the login phase or during the navigation inside the services by using the information which can be stored in the back office, as Charlie exposed at the very beginning. However, you might also want to put advanced protection during the streaming experience, and especially on live streaming, by also revoking the access to the streaming objects. The revocation could be done based on the account ID, on the session ID. It depends on your business rules you want to apply. So now, interestingly, we exposed few examples, but you can combine all of them, all of those service protection techniques. So let's take a look at a real world problem. So the key here is to define first your business rules, which then you will be able to translate in technical terms the architecture, the algorithm you will use. So let's have a look on this example. The business needs to prevent excessive account sharing, and we want to establish and enforce the business rules. So the example is, do not allow more than 3 streams outside of the household. So really straightforward example. So let's have a look on the flow. The flow is the end user on his mobile phone in this example is requesting a stream. The first action will be to determine and to make the GeoIP resolution of the request. If you are in a allowed country, you get access to it. The second step is the request is directed to the Edge function platform, where a function will be invoked, and that function will then communicate to the back office. The action of the back office is, okay, it will check the business rules, and also it will increment the status inside a counter, a stream counter, because as I explained early in the slide earlier, the rule is not more than 3. So if we are at 2 streams at the same time and there is a new one, that's fine. If we are already at 3 and you have a 4th one, this is where then the information is going back to the Edge function platform, and there is enforcement to allow or disallow the request at the edge. So now let me hand over back to Steve, who will explain to you how Limelight can help you addressing the content and service protection we discussed.
Thanks, Olivier. So service protection can really be optimal when done at the edge of a network like Limelight's network. It's really a sweet spot for customer reach, global scale, and low latency. With a network like ours having great presence globally, great connectivity, content delivery capabilities, and edge compute capabilities that are all well positioned to empower content providers to protect access to their content and services at the right place, closest to the consumer, closest to the content delivery point, and being able to do so in a low latency way. So by facilitating low latency solutions that meet both the business needs of the provider and the consumer's desire for a high quality experience, it's really a scenario for the best of both worlds. A lot of the examples we talked about today for service protection can be facilitated by using serverless compute in conjunction with the CDN. In Limelight's case, our platform for that is Edge Functions, which we launched in late 2020. Edge Functions is a serverless compute platform that empowers developers to take greater control of content delivery workflows. When Edge Functions is used in conjunction with the Limelight CDN, developers' code runs as part of the delivery workflow. Being a serverless compute platform, developers don't need to worry about infrastructure at all. That's Limelight's problem, or the network provider's problem if you're looking at other industry solutions. Developers simply need to upload their code and it will automatically be available globally and execute closest to the requesting user in conjunction with CDN delivery. Edge Function supports a wide variety of languages that are in common use today, Node.js, Python, and Go. It has an intuitive API and powerful CLI to enable developers to get accomplished what they need to accomplish. And it's easy to integrate into continuous integration and deployment pipelines with our Terraform provider. So we're seeing customers looking to use serverless compute like Edge Functions to bring about these enforcement of complex business rules with some success. So there's a lot of promise in exploiting solutions like this, and we talked about some of the advantages earlier. By bringing these kinds of business rules and the associated enforcement of them into the network, it helps eliminate the need for doing a lot of different client development. So, in summary, these are techniques that you can use to protect your content and services. We think that the network edge is a great place in order to implement important aspects of these protections. You're in control of your own business rules by leveraging the computational power of the advanced edge. And we'd like to know how we can help you do that. So feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions on this subject matter.
Okay, great. Steve and Olivier, thank you very much. We do have several questions that have come in. If you'd like to ask a question, there's an Ask a Question box just below the screen. Please feel free to type it in. So I've got a few questions that came in. One is, how do I get started? In other words, how would I get started with engaging with Limelight about using these services?
That's a great one. The way to get started, well, first I'd direct people to our website to take a look at our tools like Media Vault and tools like Edge Functions and how they work. But you'd reach out to your Limelight account executive and they can help you set up an account, and we can turn up a free trial if that's something that interests you, so you can see how you can take advantage of these technologies.
Okay, great. The second question, what watermarking vendors do you support?
That's a very good question. We are working with the leading vendors in the industry, and they're at various levels of integration. There are several where we have working solutions, but are not in market yet. You may have noticed, some of you in the marketplace several months ago, we announced Edge Functions and a watermarking solution integration with Nagra, but we expect to be able to complete our integrations with other vendors. So just reach out to your sales team if you have a particular watermarking vendor that you're working with, and we can advise you as to how we might arrive at a solution with that vendor.
Okay, great. Next question we have, this is the last question that's come in so far, so if you have a question, put it in. Can Edge functions support other problems like dynamic ad insertion?
That's an excellent question. We believe that serverless technology used in conjunction with the CDN can play an important role in an end-to-end advertising solution. Of course, advertising solutions, can be pretty extensive. There's the sell side, the buy side. There's the content information system and the ad information system, or management system, it would probably be the better term, that all participate. But leveraging serverless compute at the edge, where the content is being delivered, is a great place, particularly for streaming video, where serverless compute can be used to modify video manifest files to swap out pre-existing ads, for example, or introduce new advertisements. So in these cases, we envision the serverless function interacting with other elements of the ad system to, in a rapid, low latency fashion at the edge, facilitate customized, personalized advertising or regionalized advertising. So there's a lot of exciting things that can be done there. We're not in market with anything right now, but we have talked to customers about it, and we would love to talk to you about it if you have ideas in this space, because there's a lot of interesting things that can be done with serverless compute and CDN.
All right, great. This question just came in. You've shown a few ways to secure edge networks. What are the next steps to further secure the edge network? And what is Limelight doing specifically to iterate on this problem?
I'm going to give my colleague Olivier the first crack at that one, and if I have anything to add, I will do so.
So how do you secure better?
Wait, hang on a second. We got a follow-up. To further decrease latency, are there plans to move compute to the edge end user devices themselves? Is this even possible with Docker or whatever other technologies are out there? Okay. This sounds like it's a question more about decreasing latency as well as security. Obviously, latency is one of the key values of edge computing. So yes, I guess I'll say Limelight's focus is on the edges of the CDN network. As Steve showed, it's really sort of a sweet spot for edge computing, already being used for CDN delivery and very close to the users.
I'm sorry, Charlie, I thought you were finished.
Yep, go ahead.
No, I think this is a very interesting question, and maybe we here on the panel are not quite understanding it. So please reach out on the side, and we can take this discussion further. Thus far, from my perspective, the client code, application code that you see on devices like smartphone or built into browsers, you have a compute platform there that is typically under the control of the content owner, the application provider, what have you, entirely under their control. If you're alluding to, ways in which, network provided solutions could be granted a certain amount of compute space under the network provider's control on client devices, it's an interesting idea. Perhaps it could go someplace. And so again, perhaps we can take this conversation offline.
Great. All right. Well, we have reached the bottom of the hour, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Again, if you have concerns that can benefit from low latency edge computing, whether it's piracy, as we've talked about today, or dynamic ad insertion, as one person asked, or other things. Edge computing at the edges of the CDN network can really help a lot. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. Please check out the Limelight website. Reach out to us if you have more questions, and have a great day. Thank you for your time.